I rise today to address the potential confirmation of Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education. I rise today not just as a senator from Montana. I am a former public school teacher, a former public school board member. I have a mother that was a teacher, an aunt that was a teacher, got a daughter that's a teacher, got a sister-in-law that's a teacher. Got a number of teachers in my family, okay? They all have either taught at or currently teach at public schools. So when I was growing up, education was a critical part of what we developed into. Public education was something that my parents thought was very, very important. That was instilled in them by my grandmother, who over 100 years ago immigrated to this country from Sweden, due in part to the public education system that we have in this country today. When I came home from school every day, my mother would quiz me on what went on in public education. By the way, I went to the same school that she did. And she would find out what had transpired, both the interactions with the kids and what went on academically in the school, and also offer me a hand if I needed help with the academic portion. We would talk about my experiences in the public school because it was important. She knew it was important. She was the daughter of a homesteader. When she was a child, homesteading wasn't exactly looked upon kindly by the ranchers of the community. They thought that homesteaders were taking away their right to make a living, breaking up that good grass and putting wheat on it, making it so cattle couldn't continue to graze there. So there was a lot of friction between ranchers and farmers' kids. They all went to the same public school. In my particular case, it was Big Sandy Public Schools. And in that environment of that public school, those kids learned to get along. And what resulted from that was the greatest generation. A generation that we live in a world today due in much part to their figuring out a way to get along, figuring out a way to communicate, figuring out a way to make the world a better place. And that was due, I think, entirely because of the public education system we have in this country today. Our public education system is, and this cannot be argued, it is the foundation of our democracy. When I was growing up and the Vietnam conflict was going on and there were conflicts around the world, everybody said, these countries need to have a democracy. And then there was a realization that without an educated population, democracies really don't work. We have had a democracy in this country for nearly 250 years because of the success of our public education system. We have had a middle class in this country that has been the envy of the world because of our, listen to me, our public education system. It is the foundation of our democracy. It is the foundation of our economy. And it is a place where we learn to live together peacefully. What is troubling about the nomination of Betsy DeVos as Education Secretary is that she wants to privatize this public education system we have. I had her in my office. We talked about vouchers and we talked about privatizing education. We talked about accountability. And her response to the public education system was it was failing. So her response to that was, pull a few kids out. Pull the kids out that don't have any disabilities. Pull the kids out that are a little smarter. and put them into a classroom, and that will be what makes this country great again. This country's already great. And if we do that, I am here to tell you, the people of the Senate today, we will destroy the foundation of this country. And we will destroy, and it may take a few years, we will destroy our democracy. Now, it would be different if Betsy DeVos had spent 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second in a public education classroom. She was not educated in public schools. She's not dealt with public schools. I dealt with it as a teacher. I dealt with it as a school board member for 9 years. In fact, my second public service job was on the Big Sandy School Board. And it's important because my first one dealt with soil and soil conservation. My second one dealt with education. She has been in neither of those positions. And it doesn't matter that, quite frankly, that she wasn't in those, except it does. Because if you don't touch base with what's going on and to see the successes that are happening in public education, you can have a warped view of what's going on in this country right now. And that warped view will cause you to do things like say, you know what, we're going to put up charter schools, and we're going to have vouchers, and ultimately we're going to take away public education as we know it today. Instead of doing things like saying, you know what, we're going to invest in accountability, we're going to invest in teacher salaries, we're going to invest in a 21st century education system so our kids can compete. The answer is no, we're going to pull kids out of the school. I'm going to give you a little secret. I taught in the late 70s, and I'm far from a master teacher. I taught for a couple years. I quit teaching because I could make money doing anything else in society and make more money. I could cut meat for a day and make as much money as I did teaching school for a week. So wouldn't it be a little bit smarter, instead of privatizing the schools as Betsy DeVos wants to do, let's invest in those schools. Let's give the kids the maximum opportunity we can give them. Let's value public education. Let's value education. I'm going to tell you what happens in a rural state like mine with privatization. My school system in my hometown of Big Sandy has about 175 kids, and that is not an exception for Montana. There are a lot of schools that have 175 kids or less. And by the way, that's not high school, that's K-12. So let's say for whatever reason somebody wants to set a charter school up a few miles down the road and suck out a few kids out of Big Sandy and maybe suck out a few kids out of Fort Benton school system and a few more out of Chester system, and pretty soon they've got their little charter school, and there is less money to teach the kids that are left in those public schools. What do you think is going to happen to those kids that are left there? It's going to take away from our public education system. Ultimately, it will cause those schools to close, because the money that funds our education is at a bare minimum right now. The other thing that has happened in our public education system is that Congress, people here, have made the promise to local schools to fund kids with disabilities, IDEA program. One of the things we can do to help fix public education, let's fund it at what we promised it at, 40%. It's funded at 16% right now. So if we had a person that was going to go into Secretary of Education and said, yeah, you know what, this is a problem, we're going to fight, we're going to make sure that folks have the money from the federal level to be able to teach the kids, and we're going to live up to our promise. And by the way, IDEA is a good program that needs to be fully funded, and the federal government needs to do their part at 40%. I may have a different opinion, but that's not what she wants to do. She, in fact, wants to do something far worse than that. She told me she wanted to block grant the money for IDEA, which would further put another nail in the coffin of schools around the country, and it'd put 3 or 4 into rural schools. It has been documented here earlier this morning that the phones have been ringing off the hook, and they've been ringing off the hook opposed to Betsy DeVos. There are 1 million people who live in Montana. Over 3,000 people have contacted me opposing her. I've had 20 contact me that support her. The phones are ringing off hook. In fact, the phones are ringing to the tune of 1,200 to 1,500 calls a day. The phone system has shut down. There are some senators who aren't even answering their phone because they don't want to hear it. But the truth is public education is important in this country, and people know what's at risk here. And to have somebody who's never spent any time in the classroom of a public education system is asking for catastrophic results. I'm going to read a few comments from people in my great state who have sent me emails about, and letters, about Betsy DeVos. Here's one from Mele in Missoula. Mrs. DeVos has no place in our national education system. She is clearly not prepared, nor does she even have the most basic experience to do this job well. Our students, our teachers, parents deserve an excellent candidate, and she's not it. Kelly from Laurel, as a mother of an 11-year-old daughter, the thought of this woman in charge of our nation's school system scares me. Sandy from Billings, it would be nice to have an education secretary who's actually worked, and I say worked, in education instead of some rich woman who's never spent a day in public schools. Kim from Kalispell, we need an education secretary that knows what the IDEA Act actually is and the needs of rural school districts. We can do better, and our kids deserve better. Janessa from Freud wrote me quite a long letter, and I think it's particularly poignant, so I want to read this to you. It's a little bit long, but I think it's very clear. Now, I want to back up a little bit and tell you Freud is a very small town, not unlike Big Sandy. It's got not a lot of kids, but great people. And here's what Janessa says. After marrying my husband, a local farmer, in August of 2010, I put down my roots with plans to spend my entire teaching career in Freud, Montana. With Mrs. DeVos pushing for private school funding, our small school will be one of the first to suffer. Having two small boys that will be soon entering into their school years, they will be the third generation to walk the halls of Freud Public Schools. I want them to be able to spend all 13 years of their public school years in the same school. As an educator, I have seen what a small rural school can do for a student. While we may not get the same opportunity as large schools, when the opportunity knocks on our door, we have a large percentage of students take advantage. They have pride in their school and their community. Montana is currently suffering from teacher shortage. With a lack of funding, this shortage will only get worse. I am currently in process of earning my master's degree in educational leadership. With this degree, I've been given the opportunity to become the principal of our small school, a school my family attends. My roots are dug, and I do not want a woman like Betsy DeVos having control over our school. So please vote no. A vote for Betsy is a vote for private control. A vote for Betsy is against the community of Freud. A vote for Betsy is against Freud Public Schools. A vote for Betsy is a vote against public school teachers across this country and against the great state that you represent. A vote for Betsy is a vote against my family. And a vote for Betsy is a vote against me. Mary from Red Lodge, a 32-year veteran educator in a rural public school. I'm deeply concerned, here's what she says, I'm deeply concerned about the appointment of Betsy DeVos as Education Secretary. I'm inclined to say that her loyalty and financial backing of Mr. Trump were the reasons for the misguided appointment and not for her experience and knowledge of education issues. To be in such an esteemed position as Education Secretary, one would expect years of experience and an advanced degree to understand the ongoing issues that we're facing in the United States education. Sarah from Billings is a first grade teacher in a low-income school. I believe wholeheartedly in Montana's public schools. Betsy DeVos believes in school privatization and vouchers. She has worked to undermine efforts to regulate Michigan charter schools, even when they clearly fail. The marketplace solution of DeVos will destroy our democratically governed community schools. Her hostility towards public schools disqualifies her. She will not work to provide a free and fair education to my students who struggle every day with hunger, with homelessness, and more. I'm asking you to vote against the confirmation of Betsy DeVos. But I've heard from far more than that, from parents to grandparents to doctors to average Joes who oppose this nomination. Education is something that affects everybody's lives. In my opening remarks, I talked about the need for public education for a democracy to work and exist. As a former school teacher and as a former board member, I can tell you there's a lot of things we can do to make public education better, and we ought to do it. They're hard things to do. It's much easier to say, let's just destroy the program and privatize it, and then see what we end up with. That would be a bad decision. And that's why we should not vote for Betsy DeVos. The impacts are huge. They're huge on our economy. They're huge on our form of government. They are huge as us being a leader in this free world that we live in. In closing, I want Montanans to know that we've heard you. You've called, you've wrote, you've contacted me on Facebook, Twitter. Your message has been loud and clear. It's a message that we're hearing all across this country. It's a message that, quite frankly, if we confirm this lady, will not make America great again. In fact, it will, over time, destroy this very country that we love. And people that I talk to say, you know what, the Secretary of Education doesn't matter. It's not going to affect me. I don't know who you're kidding. The fact of the matter is this will affect every school in every community in this country. And we can say, you know, President Trump got elected and he needs to have the team that he wants. I am not going to vote for a team that destroys the public education system in this country. I would not be doing service to the people who came before me, the previous generations, and I certainly would not be doing service to my kids and my grandkids and the generations to come after. This is an important decision, folks. This is a very important decision. If we want to do the tough work of debating our public education system and determining how we can make it better and get the best people in the classrooms and get the best academic material in there for them to work off of, let's do that. But let's not destroy the public education system that has made this country great for generation after generation after generation. I would urge my colleagues, Madam President, to stand with the thousands of Montanans and the millions of Americans who have told us to vote no on Betsy DeVos.